welcome back. And of course, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the focus of this conversation is taking a look at the budget for 2015-2016. Joining me for this conversation is Senator Mark Lizarraga. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for coming to talk with me about continuing the transformation.
Well, I liked your intro. You were talking about your other guests that are coming on, and you emphasized that you're having something about sustainable water. I think that we should keep in mind that we need to be sustainable with our finances as well. And I don't believe, or we certainly don't believe, that this budget leads us on the path of sustainability. So anyhow, we can move in.
Yeah. Before I do, though, just to be able to put it into context, obviously, as the representative on the Senate for the private sector, one of the things is to understand how you put together your position. Is it something that you will now go through the documents that you just have received, or you will have some kind of consensus before you go to the Senate?
Well, first of all, I have a group that advises me, and I'm in constant communication with the leadership of both organizations that I represent, the Chamber of Commerce and the Belize Business Bureau. And when I got a hold of the budget presentation, I forwarded it to them. I've gotten their comments, their feedback. So at the end of the day, I represent the views of the people that I serve. No?
Okay. All right, so let's start off with your first impression as to the budget that was presented.
Well, before we do that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share this book really with yourself and your viewers. It's called The Budget Process. It claims it's a parliamentary imperative, and it came from the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And this gentleman that wrote it, Mr. McGee, was a clerk for many years in the parliament in New Zealand, I believe. But he stresses that a budget is not a one-off exercise. It's not today come present the numbers and boom, done. The budget is a living document, and there's a process that we should go through. And he says that there are four very, very important stages of a budget. He says first is the preparation of the budget. He says, and this is where you start consulting with stakeholders, with people, in preparing and seeing, assessing the needs of your country, etc. He says then you have the approval process, which you have more debate. That's in the House of Representatives. They're the ones that are responsible for approving the budget. Then you have the actual implementation. The executive then carries out the desires of the legislative, and they are supposed to put into place that which the legislative approved. And then you have evaluation. And he stresses, and we agree, that there's absolutely, virtually no evaluation and oversight in the way we spend our money in this country. And that continues to be one of our major concerns. Because we need yardsticks, as Mr. McGee claims, to see how we're performing so that we can judge the executive, so that we can see if we're getting value for money, so that we know that our money is being spent in a very transparent and accountable manner. Our Constitution provides for a host of oversight bodies, and none of them, sadly, are active, and none of them give us the reports that we as taxpayers deserve. So we can know that our monies are being properly managed, properly spent.
Now, that's an interesting point to start on, because we know that very recently as well, the issue of the Public Accounts Committee has been one that has been discussed thoroughly last year and still continuing into this year. Now, what it has shown is that the politics of gets involved, so far involved within even the monitoring of how public funds are spent. So whether we'll focus, the argument at that point was whether we'll focus on what has been spent a couple of years ago or what is being spent today. How do you think that we can move to a point where we'll have the level of transparency if this continues to be the problem, that we'll continuing want to check what the last group did instead of focusing on today?
Well, it stems from leadership. And it stems from leadership of those in power. Those are the people with the ability to change the laws. We claim to live in a democracy, but our voice, it seems, more and more is limited to that of one day. And anyhow, I won't get into how we decide who we vote for and all that good stuff, but certainly politics is playing more and more, it seems, and it's been acknowledged. If you read the very first page of the presentation of the Prime Minister acknowledges that in the drafting of his numbers, I guess what he's saying is he did not expect to have this huge win. So right away, he's saying, I'm coming back to you for more money because we need to reward those that voted for us. That's very sad to hear because it says that, in effect, the first draft of his budget was designed to reward only those constituencies that he thought he would win. And I'm sorry to say, but you know, we have UDPs and PUPs and all kind of Ps in all constituencies. So why punish a particular division just because they went one way or the other? But that seems to be the stated policy. That seems to be the intent. And
it was the opening of the presentation.
It was smack in the opening. There was, you know, he wasn't shy about it. So we know that we're going to have another budget or a supplementary. A supplementary means that the government is going to come back to you and say, you know what, I'm going to spend more than I thought I would spend.
Yeah, so that's one of the things the Prime Minister indicated in the budget presentation. He said he would be putting forward a mid-year supplementary appropriation bill, which means, as you're moving into this point, that there will be more money to spend. So the 1.1 billion currently in this budget is not necessarily the projection for the year of financial year 2015-2016.
No, it is not. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the numbers, just briefly, what happened last year was that last year he claimed that, as Minister of Finance, when I say he claimed, as Minister of Finance, that we were going to spend, or we approved estimates of borrowing, He's saying, so as not to bore you and go into all the numbers, we have our revenues, we have our expenditure, then normally there's a shortfall. In our history, there's been a shortfall.
It's a deficit.
Right, and that's where we need to borrow to balance our budgets. Historically, since independence, we've borrowed an average $77 million per year to balance our yearly budgets, historically. And that's why we have our debt. We'll get into that at another point. But last year, they approved borrowings of $125.8 million. Well, it turns out that last year, now it's projected that we would have borrowed $207.4 million. You see that huge jump? So, some serious money was spent over and above what was expected, and I guess this year some serious monies will be spent over and above because we've already been forewarned of the supplementary.
Just to interject here, because I really think that unfortunately we don't do justice to the budget once it's presented. It's very difficult. We're grateful to have you on set, and it's been a while in terms of being able to get persons to come on and talk about the budget for many different reasons. And the public oftentimes hears the presentation. We focus a lot on the name calling and the theatrics within the House versus what is really being presented before us, which is what is going to be done with our money and what we will have to pay back in the future with our money, or tax dollars. So if you were to break this down in terms of what the deficit means, what the revenues mean, what the projected budget is for an average household, let's use that as an example so people can really understand what we're talking about.
Okay, government gets its money primarily through taxes. You and I pay those taxes. Everybody pays taxes, whether they know it or not. we all contribute to the tax base. Every time you consume something and you buy something from a store, there's an element of tax in it. Every time you buy some farm produce, there's an element of tax in it, because one of the big inputs into farm products are diesel, fuel for planting your crops, etc. So taxes are everywhere. There are two certainties in life. They say taxes and debt. We won't avoid taxes. Now, the government needs revenue. It needs taxes to provide those basic services that any government should provide. We don't have a problem with the taxes. The Prime Minister, once again, has passed a budget and is saying no new taxes. Well, the truth of the matter is that we've been saying for a long time that our tax burden is very heavy. It's important for people to realize that 25 cents out of every dollar that you spend approximately is captured by the government in some form of taxes. So we all contribute to our revenue. And it's important that we take ownership of it.
Because we have done the work to be able to make the money to pay the tax.
Exactly. If 25 cents out of every dollar would remain in your pocket, you know what? You know, or not 25.
We'd all be happier.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But we believe that certainly the tax burden has been unsustainable, or it's held us down for a long while. And the numbers speak to that. Because the Prime Minister as well claims that there has been an increase in about 5,000 jobs, and I'll talk about those numbers soon. But that growth, history will show you that it did not come primarily from the private sector over the last, or the preceding 6 years. It came as a result of this huge infusion, and of course, when you have huge amounts of money being spent, everybody will benefit. But this, you know what they say about one day, how you go, one day basket, or one day full basket, or whatever?
One full basket.
You know, but that's not what we want. We don't want our basket to be filled today. We want our basket to be filled all the time. And the Prime Minister acknowledges that in his presentation, that this boost is short-lived, and he knows it's short-lived. So we're saying, why continue on this path of heavy borrowing, heavy spending, when you know it's short-lived? I mean, you can't live for today. You have to plan as well, you know. Anyhow,
so going back to the revenues going into this budget, or what is proposed at this point, the gap that is projected for 2015-2016. I was saying let's do a regular budget household, because it's very easy for people to understand that if you make a certain amount of money, but to be able to do all the things you have planned, your salary falls short, you have to be able to get the extra from somewhere else. Most people don't, what's very popular in Belize is payday loans, or you get a loan at the bank, or syndicates, or whatever. So people understand the concept of borrowing to be able to meet a shortfall, and that is essentially what we talk about with our deficit as a country.
Right. Well, as I said earlier, every year we have borrowed. Traditionally, we've borrowed to balance our budgets. And this money comes from some lending institution, the international financial institutions, or the local commercial banks, or grants from countries like Taiwan and now Venezuela. You know, so we've been drying up a lot of these sources, you know, and we keep playing this roulette, you know, hoping that there's going to be another lotto, another payday, and instead of managing it properly, now it seems we're hell-bent on just spending everything we have as if there's no tomorrow. And that is very concerning, because that is not sustainable. So what I'd like to do is to look at some numbers just briefly and make some comments, you know. For example, this year, or in fiscal year 2014, 2015. I'd like to review just a little bit the year before, because we have an obligation to look backwards as well. This is an opportunity for us to see as best as possible how our monies were spent and why they were spent. So if we look at our overall deficit for last year, they're saying here it's 141 million, okay? But there's no mention in this presentation of how we're going to, no mention of the financing needs for the 207 million. It shows it there, but the Prime Minister said, look, we only had an overall deficit of 141. That's a little disingenuous. The Prime Minister claims that we have created, he says, 5,000 jobs. Well, I look at the statistics from the Social Security Board between the years 2008 and 2013. Mm-hmm. And the number of registered employers at the Social Security Board in 2008 was 9,965, and in 2013 was 9,687. We had a loss of 278 employers between the years 2008 and 2013. If you look at the number of active businesses registered with the Social Security, in 2008 it was 10,655. And in 2013 it was 10,652. We had a loss of 3 businesses in those 6 years. If you look at the number of registered employees between 2008 and 2013, 2008 was 87,500. In 2013, it was 93,172. That's a gain of 5,600 employees in 6 years. Why do I mention this? Because we claim to be trying to improve the standard of living for all Belizeans. We claim to be concerned, extremely concerned about the social impact and the lives of people in our society, and we want to lift them all out of poverty. Our poverty number, by the way, there was no mention of poverty. I would have liked to have heard in this speech that, look, poverty numbers have come down from 40+% to 35%. Those would be impressive statistics, because that's when you know that your GDP numbers really is having an effect on the people. That's what you want. Yeah. GDP number is not the best way to measure the success of your people. By any means. You have to look at poverty index, etc. Those are the things where you know that the spending that you're doing is having an impact
on the lives of
exactly. Yeah. But anyhow.
But the reference you're making, you pointed out 3 scenarios. One, there are less employers over the past 6 years.
Well, to 2013. I'm going to get to 2014 and 11. So from 2008 to 2013, we had a decrease in the registered number of employers. Of 278. We had a decrease in the registered businesses, and we had a nominal increase in the amount of persons employed, 5,647. Now we know for a fact that we have more than 5,000 kids coming out of school or school systems every year. So from 2008 to 2013, 6 years, we should have created 30,000 plus jobs for those children. We only created 5,000. Where the next 25,000? And maybe that's why we still have these high poverty numbers. Those are the things we should be focused on. Surprisingly though, it is projected, the numbers I have don't claim to be final. It is projected that between 2013 and 2014, there was an increase in 728 employers.
The current projected numbers?
The current projected numbers claim that between 2013 and 2014, there was an increase in 728 employers. And that there was an increase in 566 registered businesses. And that there was an increase in 4,600 employees between the years 2013 and 2014. So that may be true. It may not be real because it's projected. So we'll know when the real numbers come in. And certainly you would expect that when there's a huge infusion of capital, of spending,
which we've seen,
unprecedented it is claimed, and I'll tell you why I believe that. There's going to be an impact. Our concern is it going to be sustainable? Back to your water thing, right? Can we continue to spend in one day or 1 year or one term and expect that because we're feeding people today, we've taught them how to fish? It's unreasonable. And it seems to be, for the most part, I'm sorry to say, these are not my words, but it's politically motivated, and we're going to reward those that support us. And that's not the way it should be. It should be we're going to improve the standard of living for all our Belizeans because they're Belizeans and we're here to serve them. We're not here to serve a particular color. We're here to serve the Belizean people. And all of them should come first. No.
What is key to mention here, and maybe we can move into that conversation as well, is of course the Petro-Carib funds. There was obviously the information provided as to how much has actually been drawn down from that particular fund and how much is actually left. But we've heard in political campaigns and speeches and numerous times in the House that this is where, that the Petro-Carib funds has allowed for this injection of finances, the spending, the increase in jobs because of the amount of infrastructure work that is currently happening. In terms of sustainability, that is ultimately what you're talking about, that the money will dry up and we will have to pay it back. Well,
let's look at the numbers. You seem to want to drive me towards the numbers.
I know, we said we wouldn't do too many numbers, but let's go ahead.
Let's look at the actual amount of monies that had to be borrowed to balance our budgets over the last, let's just go, wait, Petro-Carib came in 2012, right? Okay.
Yes.
In 2012, we restated, and that's a concern for me because earlier, last year, the budget claimed that we had to borrow $77.8 million for 2012-2013. This year, it's been restated with no notes. It's been restated to $65,800,000. So there's a huge difference there. I've never seen that because you close your accounts already. Anyhow, let's not go there. The accountants,
I'm sure you will be raising those questions as well.
Okay?
Yeah.
But let's look at what we borrowed in 2012, 2013, and 2014. In 2012, we borrowed 65.7. In 2014, we borrowed 177. Okay? And then in 2014, 2015, we'll need to borrow 207 million. Petro-Carib is 268 million that we've borrowed. Okay? So Petro-Carib can't even cover for 2013, 2014, and 2014, 2015. Okay? So this money is coming from us as well. Okay? And from other sources as well. Yes, they're the biggest, they're our biggest benefactors at this time. And long live Venezuela. And I hope that this program can be continued forever. But realistically, man, come on, it's our money, you know. Venezuela is lending it to us. Granted, the terms are very soft. Yeah. But don't feel that this Petro-Carib roll business is just a gift. It's not a gift.
It's not free.
It's money that we are going to have to pay. And it's money that our grandchildren and children will have to pay, you know, because these things spread out.
25 years at 1%, which is it's a good interest rate. This is why it's considered a great opportunity or a great financer at this point for the country. But we do have to pay it back.
Marlene, if you had a loan, or business people that have loans, and we borrowed money at 12% and 10%. And all of a sudden now your interest rates come down to 2% or 1%. What would be your first instinct?
Well, I'd be a little bit suspicious about it.
No, that's not the answer I'm looking for. Look, where I'm going, okay. Where I'm going is interest rates have been falling, and that's good. It's a good thing. But most people that have loans will take that opportunity to refinance, to restructure, similar to what we did with the super bond. When we were borrowing money for the super bond, interest rates worldwide were very high. They were 10, 11, 9%, all up there, right? So interest rates began to fall down, and we took the opportunity to renegotiate. Well, we took the opportunity to renegotiate for several reasons, but we did, and we got a haircut. But that's what you do. So now that we had access to cheap money, The prudent thing to do would have been to use some of that money to retire expensive debt, and then you spend the savings. That's the creation of wealth. You understand me? You're changing your flows. You're having a positive flow. Instead of paying so much in interest at 10 or 9 or whatever, now you start to service debt at 1%. That would have been prudent, right? But anyhow, so we borrowed this 286 million, and yes, they are our largest benefactors, and we thank them for this cheap money. But have we been managing it wisely? Have we been truly using it wisely? We'll always have needs as a country. I also believe, and we believe, that not enough is being done to save on our expenditure side. If you look at our expenses, and you look at the amount of money that we spend on electricity, and you look at all the government buildings, none of them are properly designed to be air conditioned. If you read the various reports, there are some ministries that have used more than others, but the telephone bill, they bust the budgets constantly. If you look at the government vehicles on the road, they're always speeding, they always seem to be, in more of a hurry than we are. There's so many ways that we could be looking at when things bad. You cut expenses, you try and hold and curtail and lower your expenses. There's no mention of that. There's no mention of that. We talk about the improvement of tax administration. We agree with that because we say there are too many that continue to evade taxes. There are too many that continue to find holes and have special agreements or special deals going from the different points of entry, right? A lot of us know that a lot of our borders are porous and continue to be porous, and certain elements continue to do quite well, right? In that way. So those are the things we should look at. I was looking at something the other day.
So you want to see more cost, you want to see the amount of money that we're spending cut down.
I want us to be smart. I want us to be smart. For example, there's a heavy traffic now between Chetumal and San Pedro. People are going and buying more and more from Chetumal from San Pedro because, quite frankly, the tax burden is a lot less there, and they find things cheaper. Yet we only have 2 customs officers in San Pedro, based on the report that I saw. Come on, man. That's a whole. Let's look at the highway, the Hummingbird Highway. I want to give you this example about being smart. We've had to transform so many things. And we believe that most of this transformation that's needed is because we've utterly neglected our responsibilities for basic maintenance for too long. Case in point, look at the Hummingbird Highway. A few years ago, I went down that highway. It was beautiful. John Woods had just finished that highway. Oh my goodness, the Hummingbird Highway is one of the most beautiful drives in our country. Okay? Hope Cayo people don't get vexed with me because I'm from Cayo. But it's truly spectacular. The scenery and the highway was beautiful. We knew that the traffic from the oil would have taken a toll on that road. What did we do? We put a tax in place to tax the oil a little more, remember? So one would have thought that the extra revenues generated from that special tax for freight being run there would have been used for the maintenance and repairs of that road. No. We saw for years that road, little potholes become bigger and bigger till there were huge craters in the road. So the highway now needs a total rebuilding. We're spending $7 million just to do the design studies, right? Just for consultation, design, and supervision. $7 million. You know that $7 million could have patched that thing, Sure, it would have had little patches if we'd done it in time. But now, besides that, now we're going to spend $75 million to redo that highway. Why? Why? When we could have maintained it with the taxes that we imposed on the trucking, right? And if you look at many of the streets that had to be transformed were streets that were already in good shape, okay? But we did not fix them in time. If you look at our Civic Center. That building was allowed to totally deteriorate till it was unsafe. I agree we had to tear it down. I agree it was no longer safe. But why did it get there? We do not maintain our public assets. And you and I built that thing, you know. And you and I will pay for the new one. Mm-hmm. If you have your house and you see something going bad, you try and fix it. Because you know if you don't fix it now, you left it, it'll cost you more. Yeah. That is what we want. But somebody tell me, and I've told you this on this program before, somebody tell me, said they don't make no money after repairs. They make money after build. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's true. You know? But I'm saying, when you put people in government, man, you want them to take ownership. You want them to say, I'm here protecting the assets of my people, the people that have entrusted me. Right? And I have to take care of their money.
And to be efficient about it. But I think what you underscore, it is very much within the hands of the people who are in leadership, but we as the public as well need to be able to sound the alarm from very early. We don't have to wait until a building is falling apart to be able to say, okay, it's time to straighten up and get this in good repair, or get this some good repair. And I think it's part of the issue that we have continued to see. We as a society have become more and more lax to these issues.
Well, yes and no. I think that many of us know, many of us have grown wary, and many of us have grown afraid. That is a reality.
Afraid as in political victimization.
Afraid to speak out. Mm-hmm. You know, it appears increasingly that you are attacked for your views, you're torn down. It appears that, you know, people that have an opinion, an opposing view, I mean, that you are slandered, you're victimized in many instances. I mean, there's no debate in this country. You and I should be able to sit down and have meaningful debate, meaningful communication, conversation. Look at what happens in the house. It's disgraceful. I wonder if those people know that children watch those things as well, that students. Is this the example we want to be giving towards students on how you settle difference of opinions, etc., etc.? No, man. These are the things that we need. And then, but we have in the budget, you know, monies to teach children about conflict resolution and things like that. And that's how, I mean, is that what we're going to be teaching them? Please. You know, you spoke about values this morning. Yes, we all have to look inside, right? But we have a responsibility as well, you know, not only to ourselves. As leaders, we have a responsibility to our nation, to our children, right? So we have to be teaching, we should be examples. You understand?
Now, since we're talking about the social aspect, the budget has the indications are that there will be additional spending, or I should say it was announced, because you already told me how you feel about this particular issue, that it will be a people-centered spending, focusing on health and education, poverty alleviation. You were speaking about poverty before. So, and of course, continuing in the infrastructure as we've seen since the last year. Now, in conversations before the show, we were speaking about the fact that you have looked at the numbers in terms of what will now be put into these particular sectors. So let's start there.
Well, first of all, we know that we have $160 million left in the PetroCaribe, or from PetroCaribe proceeds. It is projected in the first draft estimate that we're going to be needing $173 million. That's before the supplementary, the promised supplementary. So we're going to have to be borrowing from other sources. While we continue to borrow, by the way, our debt, it is claimed, is now at $2.7 billion, and the feared and dreaded Superbond is now less than half of what we owe. So we have doubled our Superbond in recent years, okay? Right, because the Superbond is only 48% of our debt. Anyhow, when we hear about all the transformation that's going to be taking place in civil works. We're going to continue with the social programs, etc.
The people-centered spending.
I don't have a problem with people-centered spending, but let's do it in an organized and transparent fashion. And let's not color taint it. If you have people in a society that need help, if you have a single mother that has 2 or 3 or 4 children, she's trying to work, she's trying to send her kids to school, and they just can't make it on their own. As a society, we have a responsibility, I believe, to try and help these people. I would like to see, and we passed, a law. This government passed a law in 2010, that I think it was SI 95 of 2010, that spoke about accountability and transparency in policy. Mm-hmm. If it is your policy to help people below a certain threshold, then make it a policy, make it known to everyone, so that if you believe that you fall below that threshold, you can go to the office of the social development or social services and apply, or the social workers can find you and say, you're entitled to so and so. Mm-hmm. What concerns me is that we're beginning to see every year in our budgets a social component for each ministry. So it's almost as if every ministry now has a social services commandment.
And the social development has their own budget as well.
You have a ministry that's designed to deal with social issue. If you have a program, a social program, why not put it under the social security? Same way we have the non-contributory pension, and same way they have the NHI, right? These are social programs. You have departments and ministries that are specifically designed, trained, okay, to deal with these issues. Come up with your policy. Pass your laws. Make it transparent, so that it's available to all. But I don't think that I should go to Ministry of Works or Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Transport for social help. That's not what they're designed for. The staff in those ministries don't have no training in that regard. Unless it's so simple and so easy that all they have to do is hand out. Because somebody tell you forgive the one. Give Marlene $100 when they come in. Give Marlene $200 every Friday. I don't know. I don't know what the policy is because there's no transparency in the policy.
It is only there as a.
It's there, but we don't know. We're not told how it's going to be dispersed here. Now, that's why it's important to have oversight in the House and in the Senate. Because if you had an active public accounts committee, they would put the executive in check. They could ask them. They could demand of them. Spell out this policy to me and I'm going to comment on it, right? Or we could call people in the Senate to explain to us, how are you dispersing this? What is the criteria, etc., etc. Okay? So, I'm going to be looking at the numbers and I'm going to try and make a compilation of all of that to see what impact that is having. And I'm sure it's having an impact because when you're poor, $50 help you, $100 help you, right? And it's needed. But let's have a structured, organized, and transparent way of helping these people so that everybody, regardless of how they vote, will have access to it. Okay? That to me is critical. Of course, we continue to maintain that these programs should be for a specific term of time, because in the interim, you should have programs to train these people, to give them opportunities to come into the workforce. That's where we want you, because we really want you in the workforce so that you could contribute more to the tax base, so that our country could continue to grow. We are amazed and dismayed that in this budget there's very little talk of how we're going to stimulate business, how we're going to create more employment. It says we've created, but they never say where. And I spoke about the numbers that we've seen, the projected numbers that we've seen. But we want to hear talk about creating an environment where entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs, can strive, can grow. Where are these opportunities? That's the type of debate we should be having. How do we lift our people out of poverty? By empowering them to help themselves. That's the kind of debate we should be having. You know, I want to share something. I want to share something with you, if I can. I know you want to say something.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There was a recent article in the Washington Times, and it spoke about, it said, Chile, it said, where freedom nurtures success. Mm-hmm. Chile, not too long ago, was in horrible shape, you know, a third world country. Now Chile is first world, they classify it as first world, constantly, progressively doing well. This is what the article says. It says, why have Chile and Hong Kong and Singapore and South Korea and Estonia and the Cayman Islands all become relatively prosperous in recent decades while other countries have lagged? The answer is not a mystery. It says, but it is often ignored or suppressed by the political and media classes. In the true Sonata, you know. Mm-hmm. You say, in many places throughout the world, this happens because many of them believe that the truth will diminish their own political power. It claims that countries, and we agree, that countries that have the rule of law, including honest and competent judges, countries that protect private property, countries that have free markets and free trade, countries that have relatively low taxes, countries that watch government spending, avoid destructive economic regulations, and have sound money policies. These countries tend to grow at much faster rates than countries that don't. We don't have to invent nothing, you know. As a matter of fact, all we have to do is to ask this government to do what they promised to do. That's all. Where's the accountability and where's the transparency that was promised? Where's the 13th senator? Right?
All right. Well, I think that's a great point to close off on at this point. And the debate, the last question I wanted to ask you, but we are out of time at this point, was looking at on the process of reading the budget and oftentimes the lack of debate that takes place, and the impact of those conversations in terms of having any kind of say with what the final budget will be.
It's very disheartening, but there will be no changes in this debate. The purpose of debate is so that you could learn from me, I could learn from you. At the end of the day, we come out hopefully with something that's better than we went in with. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say, for example, there is a representative in Corozal that says, you know what, this road that you propose to build in Punta Gorda to nowhere, to a border that will never exist or whatever, this road that you're spending there, and I'm being facetious, but I'm just saying, many people believe that that road will have no purpose. But anyhow, I'm sure it's going to improve the lives. Maybe it was a bad example, but I'm going to have to go with it. I'm not going to try backpedal. But anyhow, many people think that perhaps it's too much road going to nowhere. Okay? But let's say the 40 million that was being spent there, the representative from Corozal could say, you know what? I believe that my sugarcane roads are more important. I believe that, you know, the person in Orange Walk would say, I believe half of that money should be spent on the sugar roads because that will have a greater economic impact. That's going to whatever. That type of debate will never happen here because the minute you do not support this budget 100%, if you're on the government side, it's considered to be walking the floor. That has to be the most ridiculous thing, you know, in the world, right? That is not democracy. You should be able to go to the House and fight for your constituency. That's why you were voted as a representative to go into the House, into the Legislative Assembly, to fight for your people, not to fight for your party, right? You have a responsibility to all those cane farmers in the north to give them the best roads so that they could bring out their crops in time, so that rain no bother them, right? Yes, maybe we need a road in Punta Gorda for those villages. Yes, give them a road. Maybe you don't have to be such a super highway. Okay? Could be a country road, whatever. I'm saying, but that debate should happen in the House. And it
has to be a meaningful debate.
Of course. What you see is, I blame you, you blame me, I scandalize you, you scandalize me, I insult you, you insult me.
And even if there are any critiques made of the budget, oftentimes it's simply dismissed as just opposing for the sake of the opposition.
The minute you have anything to say that they do not agree with,
or does that not conform with what has been presented?
Right, you're branded, okay, as being opposition or whatever. So, you get used to it.
Which is, as we've said many times before, the difficulty we've had in getting people to come to talk about the budget, which is why, Senator, we're very grateful for you to come in and being able to share your thoughts on the budget presentation. And also, we know that you will be a part of the Senate discussion at the end of the month as well.
Thank you, Marlene. What I'd like to end on is I'd like to say to our people that we have a stake in this. I know that many of us are afraid sometimes to come out and talk. I know that many of us feel that we can't make an impact. They say if you think one thing or one person will make a difference, try sleeping in a room with a mosquito. But my point is this, that we all can make a difference, man. Yeah. Okay? And 1,350,000 mosquitoes can make a lot of noise. So it's our money. We have to start worrying about it. We have to start worrying about our children and our grandchildren. We have to start worrying about the sustainability of this reckless program and just borrowing and spending everything you could borrow for today with very little plans for tomorrow. That has to stop. We have to start taking care of the assets that we have. We have to start maintaining our public assets. We have to try and start save. We have to do so many reforms, legal reforms, public service reforms, right? Legislative, there's so many reforms, so many things we need to do in this country, and we're not doing it. We just continue to play partisan politics, and it comes from the highest level, and it is stated, it's a policy. It's a policy. We will reward those that support us, right? Instead of saying, we are going to try and make an impact for those that need jobs. We're going to lower poverty, no matter what color. We're going to create employment opportunities and entrepreneur opportunities. Those are the things we need to be focused on as a country. So we all have a stake. We all contribute over $3,000 every year to this budget. We all owe now. Interestingly, we have the highest debt in Central America per person. We're the only country from Mexico to the tip of South America that owes more than 60% of GDP. We owe 76% of GDP, right? So those are alarming statistics. The Prime Minister says, damn the statistics. We say they're real. They're real. You want to transform our country? Transform those statistics.
All right. Thank you once again for joining me. And we're going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to focus on World Water Day and water and sustainable development. So stay tuned.